Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very glad to be here, and I was glad to catch the last part of that. So inspiring. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's see if we get that. Good. Looks good to me. I hope it looks good to all of you.
Yeah.
Great. So I'll just jump right in. And, as Pradeep said, I am first full-time vice president for the arts at Stanford, and I am here to really build on the significant investment that the university has made over the past 15 or 20 years. And so I'll talk a little bit about that and about what we're doing, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions. Uh, to give you a sense of the portfolio, I have a really amazing group of units and people that I get to work with. And that includes our iconic arts presenting institutions. The Cantor Arts Center was founded when the university opened in 1891. So that signifies Stanford's longstanding commitment to the arts. And it has now a collection that spans 5,000 years with over 38,000 works from all around the world. Always free, open to the public, and just like its neighbor, the Anderson Collection. The Anderson Collection is home to one of the world's most remarkable collections of modern and contemporary American art. It is a beautiful collection, and it's also a big moment for the Anderson. It is celebrating its 10th year anniversary starting this coming fall. So, really exciting time with the two museums next to each other. Our performing arts organization, Stanford Live, which calls Bing Concert Hall and Frost Amphitheater home. Whoops, don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. And we just celebrated also the 10th anniversary of the opening of Bing Concert Hall. So, the Anderson Collection, the Concert Hall, and also the McMurtry Art and Art History Building, all helping to make up an arts district that now is about 10 years old. And then our portfolio also includes two very impactful centers of student-focused learning and research. And those are the Institute for Diversity in the Arts, which really works at the intersections of art and social justice, and the Stanford Arts Institute, which is looking more along the lines of integrating the arts into Stanford. And I can tell you that at the Arts Institute, we just had the really great news that we appointed the very first scientist to run an arts unit on campus. His name is Hideo Mabuchi, and he is an applied physicist, but he is also a practicing artist. And so really looking at those intersections of art and science and art as a research practice. And then my central office does a number of things that are very student and campus focused. We run grant programs for students who are practicing artists, for students who are running volunteer student organizations that are arts focused. We provide grants for faculty to bring artists into their classrooms. We run a number of visiting artist programs to ensure that students, regardless of what they are majoring in or focusing on, can have access to art in their lives. And we do lots of campus and community engagement programs. A few things to know about: we have every year something we call Party on the Edge. And that is, we open up the museums at night. They're free to students to come and experience these amazing collections on their own terms. And then we have a party on the lawn between the two museums that is all organized by students, includes performances and hands-on activities and food and you name it. Really exciting time. We also oversee the campus's public art program. I'm very pleased that I get to chair the public art committee with our campus architect, Dave Lennox. And we run a program called the Arts Incubator, which I will tell you a little bit more about in a minute. This is just to give you a broader sense of the landscape of the arts at Stanford. We over here, you just heard in the blue about all of the things that make up the VPA. And then we also, of course, work very closely with our arts departments, art and art history, theater and performance studies, music, creative writing, inside the School of Humanities and Sciences. And then Oh, in addition to that, we work very closely with the Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education. There, we run a summer arts intensive program that gives students the opportunity to focus completely on a project outside of the academic year, and work with faculty and visiting artists in order to pursue a creative project. There's also Italic, which is a first-year residential program that's focused on the arts and offers academic and other offerings where students who are creative are living together, and engaging with the arts in their residential life. We also work with the Office of Student Engagement, and our VSOs, voluntary student organizations. And all of this just scratches the surface of the arts at Stanford. There are so many other things happening, but I thought it would be helpful for you all to just have a sense of kind of the universe that we're working in. So since I've been here, I mentioned I've been here for, maybe I didn't, but I've just celebrated my second year anniversary. I report directly to the president, and so I'm able to really hear about and think about the arts at the highest levels. And what we're hearing is that art really is crucial to our lives, and that students and faculty are really, they really understand that art and participation in arts activities can inform how we are as citizens and how we think about a more equitable and just world. Students are hands down oversubscribing to arts offerings and yearning for re-energized community life. Sorry, I'm touching something. And then faculty across disciplines are expressing increased interest in working with artists and the artistic process to really catalyze discovery and to think about research differently and more expansively. So what we know, and what I can tell you, I've had a long career in the arts, and I have not experienced a time like this when more people understand the deeply transformative role that art can play in people's lives. And I mean people who are in the arts, and I mean people in leadership positions and young people. And because we know this, because we know what it feels like to be moved by a painting, to be transfixed in a performance, to lose space and time, because we know what that can feel like and what that can do for us individually, we have an obligation to assure that we are making relevant, meaningful, accessible arts activities for everyone. And we also have the obligation to apply that transformative power to the collective good when it makes sense. Stanford is really positioned to help catalyze this momentum and really think about how we integrate art into all facets of our lives. We do, we know now that a lot of the challenges we face are, in fact, human problems, and they won't be solved by science and technology alone. We know that artists are visionaries and researchers and makers, and they're having transformative impact, one classroom, one neighborhood, one block at a time. We also know and have the data. Artists are driving transformation, and art activities are contributing to health and well-being. So again, Stanford Arts is poised to execute a bold and distinctive vision that advances the university's mission. The priorities in my office, just so you understand them, are one that I mentioned already, to advocate for the arts at the highest levels of the university and really ensure that art is integrated into campus daily life. And I'll just pause to say, when I first started, people would say often art should be everywhere. And I think what a lot of people meant by that, and it is true, is public art, art on the walls, art on the stages, art in the communities. And I also think that we should be integrating art into systems and structures where it makes sense. And I'm going to give you an example of how we're doing that in a minute. We're here to coordinate and amplify and maximize the impact of arts-focused and arts-interested people on campus. We do this by gathering people, bringing communities together. We have a now sort of very revered annual gathering of the arts community where we bring together people from across campus, from H&S, from applied physics, political science, staff, people working in engineering and computer science that we know, and we know these people are very engaged in the arts and maybe practicing artists themselves. So we're here to build community and here to lift and leverage all that is already happening. We're also here to support the arts ecosystem in the region and to help students engage with that ecosystem, as well as position Stanford as a national leader. And then finally, we're here to be a laboratory to really focus on what is unique about Stanford and our interdisciplinary opportunities where artists can be working alongside so many other scholars. So to drill in just a little bit on one example that might be of interest to you all before I take any questions, the Stanford Arts Incubator is really about supporting these interdisciplinary arts initiatives that can really catalyze change and use momentum on the Stanford campus in order to influence the way we are thinking about the arts nationally and in the context of community life more generally. So there's a very specific program that we just launched. And by the way, today is Social Prescribing Day. So this is a thing. So we're here together learning about the Stanford Arts Prescribing Program on Social Prescribing Day. And so social prescribing, really, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's really, in effect, a kind of community of referral program. And we've seen social prescribing where healthcare providers are including in their prescribing to their patients things like exercise or outdoor activity or healthy food. And what our goal is for healthcare providers to understand that there are many instances where prescribing arts activities can actually advance health and well-being. So we are working on this program that connects students with arts and culture activities in support of their individual health and well-being goals. We've partnered with a national organization called Art Pharmacy to offer arts prescriptions to our university community. What is included in an arts prescription? 9 doses of arts and culture activities with refills available, and support from an art pharmacy care navigator, which I will talk a little bit more about. Right now, all matriculated Stanford undergrad, co-term, and graduate students are eligible for this program. So what we know, as I already said, is there is growing momentum for using non-clinical community resources to address health and well-being, to expand what we think about in terms of holistic support, and meeting people where they are and understanding what might help them. What we know, and all of this is evidence-based, is that participation in the arts can increase a sense of belonging and social connection. It decreases anxiety, depression, and isolation. It literally lowers cortisol levels and increases serotonin and dopamine, boosts self-esteem and confidence by participating in culturally relevant and participant-centered activities, and improves overall emotional well-being. So how it works. I mentioned Art Pharmacy, which is a national company specializing in arts prescriptions. And Arts Pharmacy has hired a care navigator, the amazing Ben. And Ben is facilitating student experiences from intake to engagement to reflection. And I'll talk a little bit more about what this process is in just a second. And then Stanford and my staff here in the VPA have worked to build partnerships across campus. So a partnership with Vaden, with our student mental health services and their well-being outreach workers, but also a partner with approximately 20 other community-oriented student-facing units that have raised their hands saying, I want to be able to refer the students that I'm coming into contact with to this program because I think it could benefit them. And so very excited to have, we didn't expect to have 20 partners. We expected to have a half dozen. And just the level of enthusiasm for the program has really been very encouraging. So this is how it works. Our campus prescribing partners might make a recommendation. So they come into contact with a student who may say express that they're feeling isolated and that they also, miss getting out and going to performing arts events. And then they would get referred to a care navigator. Students can also self-nominate. They can self-refer. Once they go to the care navigator, in this case, Ben has helped us develop a database of every arts activity that is happening on campus. So it's everything from concerts and performances to exhibitions and films. It's also hands-on workshops, dance classes, weaving, basket weave, all these things. So a very comprehensive database. Ben's job is to meet the student and understand what might help them, what might interest them. So it's very customized. It's very much about the individual person. Ben will also try to understand, well, what are your challenges? What are your barriers? And maybe it's your class schedule. Maybe you can't get to something because of transportation, or maybe you don't want to go by yourself. And so Ben will then link the student to the appropriate activity. And if the student wants to bring a friend, that's also part of the package. So there's an opportunity if you're feeling intimidated to go to a museum or you haven't been to a concert for a long time, you don't have to go alone. And Ben will make all the arrangements. So the student does not have to go figure out how to get a ticket. None of those things, just follow through on this prescription. Student participates, and then there's a check-in. And it's been really profound for us to experience the level of interest in this, particularly because I think part of the discussion that you all just had, just knowing the Stanford student population, how busy they are, we wondered if they would be able to make time for something like this, and we've been very encouraged. So this was just the first month. We are now in just the second month, and this has basically doubled or more than doubled in terms of referrals. So you can see that there's a lot of interest, and students are raising their hands, and also our community partners are referring students. As of the first month, we had 94% fulfillment. Students were not just taking the prescription, but they were actually participating in the activity. And then we use the well-being indicators from the World Health Organization as our measurement tool. And as you can see here, we saw a 20% increase just in that first month. So we had a baseline, we asked the students the same set of questions, and we saw a 20% increase. So very encouraged about this. And just a few, for you to have a quick sense of how students are feeling about this. Lovely to be in the room with people, to feel connected, to laugh and enjoy this space. I felt inspired. I really enjoyed the show, and it took my mind off of other stresses. I was able to immerse myself in the art and walk away with a poignancy that filled me. So before I end, because I know you've been listening to a lot, I will just say that part of what we're doing here with this program is we've identified a system, a set of community partners, a well-being outreach program at Vaden. And because we have the evidence, we know that in that system, if we could permanently integrate the arts into that system, there would be people who would benefit from it. We're doing very similar things in terms of advising, residential fellows, how we look at the neighborhood programs. We have a visiting artist in the neighborhoods right now who's working directly with students to help cultivate a sense of cohesion and belonging. So the work is really about the idea that art can be transformative in so many different ways, and we want it to be part of the daily life of the campus. So with that, I will just end, and I'm happy to take any questions or clarify anything for anybody.
Well, thank you, Deborah. I think that was a fascinating program. Never heard of it. The arts being prescribed. So that's great to see how you've innovated. And also, it interestingly ties up with our previous speaker, it's which was just coincidental. But yeah, it looks like the arts does help in, relieving stress, and that's good for the health of everyone around. So where do you see this program going? I mean, the numbers are still small, they're increasing. How far do you think it might go?
I mean, our goal is to run the pilot for a long enough period of time where we can really gather the data and understand the impact. And I think one way or another, we intend to continue to integrate into these systems. I think for the Stanford community, this will continue to be a thing. And if anything, we'll expand it to staff and faculty, and we'll be thinking about it in other ways. We're also part of a national movement here, and Stanford is the first university to partner with Art Pharmacy. And I can tell you now that I just got a call from Johns Hopkins. There are several other universities that are now considering it. So another piece of this is we can lend Stanford and our gravitas into this movement and help build momentum. And hopefully one day the arts will be integrated into high school systems, into community colleges and universities everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So anybody has a question for Deborah, please put it in the chat line. Uh, yeah, in terms of the are you seeing the participants also coming from the engineering and sciences undergraduate from those those majors as well coming in?
Oh, oh yes. Yes. I mean, I think it will be no surprise to parents here that so many of our students are um, actively practicing something. They might be playing music or they're painting or they're writing poetry, but they're a computer science major. That's very significant here. And so I think, I see my role in support of my colleagues at Art and Art History and the music department, et cetera, as supporting those students who declare an arts related major and helping them feel supported and feel like that is as good of a declaration as any other, and helping them understand what their career pathways can be and what a successful career in the arts and life in the arts can be. And then I think another part of our role is to really meet those students who want to engage in the arts, but it's hard because they've declared another major. That makes it harder for them to get into some of the offerings at these departments. How do we support them? How do we make sure art is an active part of their lives? And then there are the students that maybe haven't had as much engagement or exposure. How do we meet them? How do we turn them on and get them excited? I think it's all of those things.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating that Stanford is leading this this charge, and other universities might emulate it as well. That is really very good, very interesting. Uh, so any other questions for Deborah? Please put them in, or you can actually unmute yourself and ask directly if you want at this point.
I have a question for you, Deborah. I'm wondering if you think part of the success of this is that it's a way of bringing students together to engage. It's sort of facilitating social interaction and helping to decrease some of the loneliness and isolation that students are feeling. Or do you think it's more of the art itself?
I think it's such a great question, and I think it's both and. There's no doubt that many people, maybe and very specifically this generation of young people, is experiencing isolation in a way that is pretty extreme. And our Surgeon General speaks to loneliness as an epidemic in this country, and so I do think that we can't underestimate how a lack of engagement and connection with others affects our health outcomes. And I don't think it's just mental health. It can be, other chronic issues. And so I think that they're very wrapped up, really. And then the idea that a student can freely, without barriers, with support, choose arts activities that resonate for them, that are relevant to their lives, I think is also really important.
So we have one other question. My student loves both the arts, the theater, and physics, and is wanting to double major in both. But the implementation of that at Stanford has been very stressful and difficult. Uh, for keeping up with both of them, the homework and the time, etc. Can you speak to how a parent, uh,
Yeah.
stress stemming from both these passions? How, yeah.
Yeah, and also just not just so common. I think to the earlier conversation you had, it's like we think that we are alone in experiencing these kinds of stresses, but they're probably more common than not. Um, And in this case, I would practically encourage your student, if they are not already engaging with the Stanford Arts Institute that does an inner arts minor and also has a capstone program. And that is often students who are double majoring and or just majoring in a STEM field, but they are artists. So it's a way for them to come out with a serious piece of work from their undergraduate career that's arts focused, but it takes the pressure off of having to be in two places at once all the time, because you get to integrate it. And that community would also be very supportive for students like this one here.
So do you have to choose, or is it possible to minor in one, major in both?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I obviously I'm not running the academic units, but the interarts minor is one option, and that community. So these communities, like the students that are living in the italic program that I mentioned before, would be a great resource. The students who call Harmony House, where Institute for Diversity in the Arts it lives, students call that home. It's a community. And then I think you find that also at the Arts Institute. So I think it's helping to connect in so that you don't feel alone, and you're learning from how your peers are integrating these different passions.
Thank you so much, Deborah. It was a fascinating talk on the arts. It's good to know that so much is happening at Stanford on the arts side. Thank you very much for the
Thank
time. We
you. Take
appreciate it.
care.
And thank you for such a creative, I mean, it's really an out of the box approach to helping students. And I love the arts pharmacy, the prescription element. When you've really thought through this in a very creative, novel way. How great for us.
Well, thank you. And tell your students about it. And, also any student should look to my office. There are so many resources. We have student liaisons, again, for students that might feel those stresses. We're here.
Wow, it's like a concierge service for the arts. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
unbelievable. And thank you so much, Deborah. Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.